Welcome to Leaders and Laggards.
I'm Dave Swenson. Welcome to this episode of Leaders and Laggards. As usual, I've got Ken Riches and Jeff Custer along with me, and our topic tonight will be teamwork. For me, this is just kind of a hot button topic because it's something that gets asked of me so often. I don't know about the two of you, but this is probably top 3 requests that I get from folks is, how do we do something with regards to teamwork? And, and above and beyond that, what does it really mean, right? Because there's a lot of different variants of teamwork and team building and all these kinds of things, right? So it's something that I get asked a lot. And so I'm just curious what your input is going to be on the subject, because I think it's critical. So the first question that I have this week is really, do you believe that being able to build that high-performing, tight-knit team is an important skill that a leader should have, or not, right? Maybe you don't think it's as important. And then I guess the second part of that question is, why do you feel that way? So let's start with Ken.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is absolutely. I think it's important. A leader can't do it by themselves. And you need to have a team behind you that understands the vision and the direction for the team. And to me, the ticket to the dance is having a common goal that the team is working towards. And so I was kind of thinking about the topic, there's a quote or I'm not sure who to attribute it to, that if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And kind of an analogy or an example that comes to mind is a basketball team. And with the basketball team, the teams that are really pass the ball and play together those are the teams that will go have a more likelihood to win championships versus a team that has heroes that they may win games, but they may not go as far. And I think that I've quoted Chicago sports figures before. I can't help it. That's where I grew up.
Sure. So
in Michael Jordan's own words, talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence win championships. And I think I kind of look at it as that a leader has to understand the talents of their team and then to take and mold those talents so that the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. And if you do that, then you should be able to get a better job done in a shorter period of time than without that collaboration.
Your thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah, Ken, you said everything I think I was going to say, although I didn't have the good quotes from Michael Jordan like you. Dave, I think around, just kind of at the basics, trying to achieve results for the organization, whether that's profit or the customer experience or employee experience. I mean, those are the things that without good teamwork, I think you're going to struggle to achieve those outcomes. I mean, that's pretty basic stuff. So we probably all agree on that. I mean, I think the reason why you do it, stuff that Ken said, I think teams are going to be more effective than individuals. And I put the math to it, Ken. I said 1 + 1 = 3 when you're talking about teams. And it's really just saying the same thing that Ken said. But, I think you leverage the skills of different people. You're more creative as a team. I think about, just meetings I have, even with just one-on-one, things that I never think of, if the three of us talk every week, I was like, oh, I never thought of it that way before. So all of a sudden there's creativeness, there's ideas that alone we just don't get there, but together 1 + 1 = 3, or so maybe in our case, 1 + 1 + 1 = more than 3. The importance is, I think if you just leave trying to achieve these results up to chance, it probably is not going to happen. It's got to be intentional. I think we have to be intentional, and I think we'll probably be talking about that the rest of the show.
For me, I think it's probably not too strong of a statement to say that your ability as a leader to build that trusting, high-performing team is going to really be a reflection of your ability to be a leader, right? I mean, because otherwise it's a one person show, and there's probably, not a lot of things that have been built of great significance that were really done only by one person, right? And so the essence of being a leader is that you're able to build that team, and it's got to go further than just saying, we're on a team, or, you come into work and you say, hey team, how's it going? And, just because you use those terms doesn't necessarily mean that you have a team.
Yeah.
Maybe better to say you have a team, but maybe not a high performing, tight knit team.
Yeah, you're right, Dave. I mean, you have a team. Probably a just definition of a team is probably a group of people that are brought together to achieve a common purpose. So always that group is probably a team. Whether or not they're effective is a whole nother thing.
So second question then, it seems common sense that you need a team, or that the desire would be to build a team, right? Most people understand that. Why do you think it is that leaders struggle so mightily to build those high performing, tight knit teams?
So I think that all teams are not created equal. You have cross-functional teams, functional department teams, customer teams. And I think it becomes important to understand each stakeholder and how they support the team. There can be hidden agendas, competing priorities, and unclear expectations. And as you may know, I have a pretty strong project management background, and as part of the teaching in some of the classes I used to do regarding project management, teamwork is one of the aspects, and stakeholder management. And to me, they kind of go together, because everybody that's on a team is a stakeholder. I found it useful to understand the power, interest, and attitude of each stakeholder. And if you can imagine a cube with your horizontal axes being the power and the interest, and then your attitude is your vertical. And what you really want to do is try and move the power and the interest and maximize those. And then the power quotient gives you an idea of the best way to communicate with those stakeholders.
Sure.
So that's kind of a way that I've always looked at it. But I really think that it's just that stakeholders have different objectives, and they have different power, attitude, and interest. And if you don't understand that, then it's going to be really hard to get that cohesive team working together.
Some leaders don't even recognize the need to do it. I think they're oblivious to the fact that performance as a team really matters. Probably kind of along with that, I don't think they maybe really think through the risk and reward, the trade-off if they don't do it. And then probably the last point is they don't know how to do it. So even if they do have this concept, like I need to have this high performing team, I don't even know where to start. I think those, to me, Dave, are a couple of reasons why they fail to do it.
Yeah, you stole some of my answers. I think right off of my papers.
Yeah, well, it's kind of fun. We all kind of are on the same page, so that's pretty good.
So, just add a little bit to what you said, and I think that one of the reasons that people struggle, or leaders in particular struggle to build teams, is because they're nervous what that means to them, right? So maybe they've come up through the ranks as that technical performer, and now they're the leader of the group. And so I don't think it's uncommon for someone to think, well, geez, if I build that high performing team, does that risk my job security, right? Because now I've got people that maybe can do my job, right? And so I just think there's a little bit of apprehension about what it might mean to them personally. And then the other component, and you definitely shed light on it, but is that having a role model or an example to look to, right? This is actually what a team actually looks like. And by the way, this is kind of how you put it together, right? So very similar to what you said. It's just not been a point of focus for a lot of leaders. All right, Jeff, this one's yours. We'll kind of start to wrap things up here. Is if one of the listeners came out of tonight and they said, you know what, I think we need to either build that tight knit, high performing team, and or re-engage our efforts to strengthen our team. What are the actions that maybe somebody can start taking tomorrow? That's kind of part one of the question. Part two of that is, long term, maybe what are the things that they could be doing internally? And then when does it make sense to bring in somebody externally to help?
Yeah, what a great set of questions. I was kind of thinking about preparing for this, and it's like, oh, we're going to try to cram this into a short few minutes. And, it's probably multiple discussions. In the short term, I was looking at really asking maybe another question. Is it a new or is it an existing team? Because I might take a different track if it was a fairly new team versus an existing team. If it was a fairly new team, I think the leaders got maybe a different path in establishing relationship with the team members. I actually like a tool I have a tool I use called a new leader transition tool, and it really does a good job kind of setting expectations for the team and the leader, kind of setting those team norms, expectations, what I'm like. And where I found that's really successful is to be facilitated by somebody else. And so I think if you're in a situation with a new team, that's the direction I go. With an existing team, I think you can probably use some of the same tools, might be just a little bit different. You might have some relationship mending to do.
Sure.
So one of the things, another tool I really like using that you're probably familiar with is life cycle of teams. And it really gets around, the 4 steps: forming, storming, norming, performing.
Yep.
And, every team's going to go through those stages. If you're in an existing team, you're somewhere along that spectrum. You can't skip steps, as you know. When members change, you got to start over, at least for a short time. I think that's a great tool for leaders to use to figure out, how do I do this? What are the concerns on the team that I need to address? That tool does a good job moving you towards higher performance. And then I think you kind of talked more about long term. So that's to me kind of like, okay, let's get going. Longer term leaders, I think, need to consider this. Do they have the right players with the right skill sets on the team? And I think about Ken, going back to sports analogies. I think about a football team. The pro football teams have 53 people on their roster. They have to have the right 53 people because they can't have another one. So they have to have the right people with the right skills to try to win. And I think in organizations, it's very similar. A leader needs to understand what are the right team dynamics, what are the right skill sets. Ken, going back to what you said about basketball analogy, you can't have a bunch of prima donnas. You have to have people that know their role. So I think longer term, as leaders think about, people come and go in organizations all the time. So if a leader has a team member leave, they have to really be thinking about, what kind of person do I want to replace in there? What skill set do they need? Instead of just hiring the best person for that job, how are they going to fit in the team and make us overall more successful?
You're up, Ken.
And I had my opener was the same as Jeff's. It's Tuckman's team development model. And forming is where you're getting to know each other. Storming is where you begin collaborative work, even though your ideas may differ. Norming is you're working together and you're adjusting to work together. And then performing is you're functioning as a well-organized unit. And as Jeff said, when you bring a new team member in or someone leaves, you have to go through that. And so I think that it's important for a leader to understand where in that life cycle the team is, and then work on shortening the gaps so that you can get to performing as soon as possible. As far as the steps you can take internally, certainly team building is one of the tools that can be used. In team building, some of the key things are role clarity, trust, job satisfaction, commitment to the organization, motivation, and empowerment. And some of the things that are key for a team to be successful are communication, commitment, respect, accountability, delegation, support, and having a plan on how you're going to reach to the end goal. And then external resources, personality or emotional intelligence assessments such as DISC or Briggs-Meyer can certainly help. And then if you just Google team building activities, there are all kinds of activities, and depending on the structure of the team and where you are in Tuckman's team development, there are icebreakers and different exercises you can do in order to help build that team.
I kind of start at maybe where some people, would do later on in the process, maybe. And I think I've shared a couple of times, I'm a fan of that concept of putting together a BHAG. And so it's an abbreviation for having a very big, hairy, audacious goal. And if you think about really the journey of building that team, that legacy, you really are talking about a big, hairy, audacious goal, right? So I guess where I'd start tomorrow, if I wanted to, if I saw this as something that may be valuable, is I would go through those 4 steps of, asking questions like, if we did have that kind of a team, what would it do for us, right? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Do we even understand what a team is at the definition of a team at the right level, and then really start to think about, is there value, right? Is that something you want to pursue? And then answer the questions of what kind of information, what kind of people could help me. So, I would start by filling out a BHAG form on putting together that tight knit kind of team. Internally, steps that you could probably start as soon as this week is start to measure something around people or morale, right? If you think about the concept that what gets measured gets done, there's not a lot of organizations where front and center they're measuring morale or how people are, what are we doing internally to make sure that we're building that culture? Because to steal that quote, culture is not part of the game. It really is the game, right? If we're going to get anything done. And so those are the kinds of things I guess I'd start working on internally. There's a whole bunch of videos you can watch on YouTube and or a handful of books that are probably not a bad place to start, but start measuring, start talking about why it's even important. And I think at some point in time, you're probably going to have to engage somebody externally to have those conversations that you likely wouldn't have without them. Make sure you're talking to somebody that's actually, if they've not built a team, they better at least have played as part of one. They better at least understand what a real team looks like and not just have read the book and are bringing that to you. I like the concept of, starting with some kind of a workshop boot camp. I tend to roll out anywhere from a 3 to 12 day or 12 session kind of boot camp and come out of that with a go forward plan. And I think there is a place for offsites, but I wouldn't necessarily start with one. I've been doing those the last couple of years out in the Black Hills, and they're great activities for a group of, maybe up to 20 people. But that's not the first thing I would do. I do think this is something that you're going to have to realize is your job as part of the leadership team or as the leader of the organization. But you likely are going to need some help from someone that has experience in this field.
You're not going to go right to snipe hunting.
Not going to go right to snipe hunting or the truth or the trust fall, right? Probably not going to that or passing around the talking stick right away. But I think there is room for that with your inner circle. I think there's room to do something offsite. But again, figure out the what and the why of team building before you engage anyone. Boy, it wouldn't take you very long on LinkedIn or Google to find somebody that's a team building expert may have never actually been part of a team in their life. Any parting words of wisdom for the listeners? We'll start with you again, Jeff.
Dave, I want to go back to something you mentioned really at the beginning, and it was the fear that leaders have that somehow if you have this really high performing team, that somehow your job is at risk. And I would challenge the leaders that are listening to really flip that on its head. And the higher performing team you have, the better I think you look as a leader versus worrying about somebody taking your position. The other thing I think it ties into that I talk about a lot is having people work at the right level. And I've seen organizations where people don't work at the right level. You have managers doing administrative work and so forth. That's not a healthy place. If you have a high performing team, people can perform at the level that they should be and a little higher. And so you start, instead of managers working on administrative work, you have them working on higher level work. And I just think it makes for a much healthier organization. I've been part of high performing teams, and it is just like magical to watch what happens when you get that high performing team that's kind of just hitting on all cylinders. The things that can be accomplished, things that organizations, other people in organizations say, oh, you can't do that. That can't be done. And I've been part of when they're high performing teams, because of the creativity and the ideas that we have as a team, just smash through those people saying, you can't do that. Not only do we do it, we did it way better than they said. So I think that's my challenge to leaders is if you're in that mindset of fear about having a high performing team, change your mind, because all the other stuff we talked about, all the tools and stuff you can do, if you don't have the right mindset going into it, I think the rest of it's probably a waste of time.
Yeah, and I would even take that concept a step further. And I know that when I'm coaching somebody, a leader, that it's one of your goals should be, can I step away for 1 or 2 or 3 weeks or months? And is the team still going to perform? And that should be one of your goals as a leader, is so that the team will function even if you're not there. That's when you really talk about a high performing team with high trust. To me, that is one of the keys, is if something happens and the leader has to step away, the team can still function and still perform.
First and foremost, if you're nervous about building a team, and I like where you went with that, Jeff, you kind of took me in a different direction there. Realize that, it's common for me to be working with a group, and for someone to pull me aside and say, you know what, it's not just that I'm learning more about the people that I work with, and I believe we're getting to be a more tight-knit, trusting team, but I'm learning things about myself in this process that I don't know that I would have learned otherwise. So it's been personally a great growth opportunity. Jeff, I think a week or two ago you had a post out and you said, what is it that you like about being a leader? And this is exactly what gets my juices going, is undoubtedly when you're going to go through a team building process, you're going to have someone that at some point in time, that you've impacted the way that you've impacted their life personally. And that's what keeps me going, as in this whole game of leadership development, is that look, when somebody just gives you that look and says, yeah, you helped me in a way that I don't know that otherwise I would have ever come down this path. Don't short sell the impact that team building can have on not only your team, but you as well. That's I guess that would be my final word. And with that, we'll wrap up this episode of Leaders and Laggards, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching, and remember, leadership matters.